The Manage Smarter Show is brought to you by SalesCred, the sales skill building solution that empowers sales teams worldwide to multiply sales opportunities by improving perception, accelerating trust building, and by earning repeat business. Get the best-selling book by C. Lee Smith, download the free mobile app, and now sign up for the SalesCred Masterclasses. Book your session now at salescred.com. Welcome to the Manage Smarter podcast with hosts C. Lee Smith and Audrey Strong. We're glad you're here for discussions on new ways to manage smarter, hire, develop, and retain talent, improve results, and propel team performance to new heights. This is the Manage Smarter podcast.
We talked about AI on this podcast, Lee, and today we're going to talk about the ascendancy of it combined with neuro-linguistic programming. And that's something we haven't touched on. It's kind of a blend of two areas of expertise, and how, as a sales manager or a manager in general, with the ascendancy of AI, you need to change some of the ways that you're doing business.
You know, the art of communication, even though you have
Yes.
AI in there, that doesn't, I like to say, or have said previously on this show, that AI at times may have a high IQ, but also at times it has a very low EQ. So, and Frank's going to actually help us as managers, as leaders, as salespeople, basically how we can use AI to our advantage, but also how we can avoid using AI then to harm our credibility and to hinder us from getting, ultimately what we want, and also to help those people that we're trying to serve.
Exactly. Welcome to Manage Smarter, everyone. I'm Audrey Strong, Vice President of Communications here at Sales Fuel.
And I'm C. Lee Smith. I'm the CEO and founder of Sales Fuel.
So this book, the timing could not be more amazing, Frank. Frank Somma is our guest today, author of the must-read, B2B is really P2P, How to Win with High Touch in a High-Tech World. Frank is a sales and communications expert and speaker. He uses Neuro-Linguistic Programming Institute training to teach business people how to be more charismatic and persuasive. With the advent and ubiquity of AI, Frank teaches NLP techniques to make people good at the only thing AI cannot be good at, which is relating exceptionally well to other people. We hope to do that today. His book really teaches the techniques from 30 years of experience. Frank Somma, thank you for coming. And boy, I'm assuming the book is selling very well because everybody's worried about this.
Knock wood, yes, we're doing very well, and I'm happy that people are finding value. You know, when you talk about AI and its uses, it's an amazing tool, and I love using the bits and pieces of it that I've been able to use. I think my caution to people, and the reason, one of the reasons behind the book is that I found that salespeople were leaning on the technology instead of leaning into it.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference is significant because if you look at, for example, Professor Vanessa Bonds out of Cornell did a wonderful study where she sent people out with an ask, okay? Sent two groups of people out and asked. First group went out and asked via email. Second group went out and asked verbally on the phone. The verbal group outdid the email group by something around 85 to 15. So then she took that very successful phone ask and sent people out in person, compared it to the phone ask. And in person was 67% versus 33. So the hierarchy of communication then for us as salespeople is really going to be in person when you can do it, Zoom when you can't, phone behind that, and in last place comes emails. Now, wrapping that up into AI, I see a lot of people asking AI to write their emails. And that's my caution. I mean, I use email all the time. I've got cadences in my CRM that, it's a mail call, a few different things. I have an assistant who I hired in Pakistan. Now she lives in London. I love the tech. I really do. And I use it all the time. My caution is only that if I could point and click my way to everything, what do I need you for, Mr. Salesperson? What do I need you for, Mrs. Salesperson? It's, you've got to do the only thing that we can do, which is interpersonal communication. That's why I teach the NLP techniques to help folks to master that part of what we do.
So yeah, let's talk about NLP a little bit. My first exposure to NLP was a couple of decades ago, and I heard a speaker speaking at a sales symposium, and basically the gist of it was if you say these magic words in this order or whatever, you can get whatever you want. And that really turned me off to NLP, to be candid with you. So talk to me about what NLP is, what's not, and where that speaker went so terribly wrong.
Well, wouldn't that be great, right? Some magic word. I would love that. I would love
Yeah.
that Jedi kind of mind trick to, but no, it's not like it's really about if I learned a couple of words of Mandarin before my trip to China, folks would receive me better because I'd be speaking their language. So what NLP really does, it was two scientists, Bandler and Grinder, who broke down interpersonal communication into its really granular nuances and then taught what happens. So if you see two people in rapport, those two people often move like one another, sound like one another. Like you see two kids running around together, don't they say all the same things and have the same vocal intonations and so on and so forth?
Or you're at a company and they all have the same acronyms and everything like that. They've got like their
Sure.
own little language.
When you're in rapport with someone, or if you want to be in rapport with someone, you try to act more like them, right? This is natural human tendency. So what NLP does is it teaches you what people in rapport speak and act like, and then you can kind of front end load that rapport. It gets into some, significant nuances when it comes to word choices and things like that. But by and large, what we're talking about is a great example is, have you met someone who tells you a story in great detail versus someone who tells you a story in huge chunks, right? So this is like this age-old thing where you see people going, okay, do you have a point? We're going to land this plane, right? So but now imagine you're in a selling situation or business situation of some kind, and you're speaking with someone and they tell a story in great detail. If your body is doing, your lips are moving, how's that going to be for rapport? So I teach people to recognize these styles and then be able to walk into that style. So you're matching tone, you're matching pace. And if someone is very detail oriented, if I'm telling them a story and I tell it in big chunks because let's add what I refer to this as a view from the air versus a view from the ground. So if I'm a view from the air and you're a view from the ground, and you say, how'd it go today? How was your day today? I say, oh, yeah, it was good. Everything was smooth. You feel insulted. Like I didn't think you were important enough to give you details. That's what happens in your brain. So if I know that about you, I would say, oh, it was a terrific day. I got to sit with a great sales team over at MBS. We went through some of the techniques. We did some listening drills. Those guys were like sponges. They absorbed so much. I really had a good time with them. Super interesting. It was up in northern New Jersey. Not a bad run for me. And a matter of fact, I went to see a friend of mine afterward who lived close by. Now, just by throwing in a little color commentary, I'm going to satisfy my view from the ground person who's listening to me and not insult them. But I can't do that unless I'm aware that we have a difference in style.
Mhm.
Yeah, and likewise, then you have the other person then that is just, okay, I'm just being curious. I don't need your life story here.
Right.
So yeah, it really is about that. And I will say that I had a executive coach at one time who was absolutely amazing. And one of the things that I learned from him was he would actually go to talking to me, and then someone would bring in their
Same
kid
thing.
into the office, and suddenly he could changed he made his voice soft. He spoke in a different language. I mean, he really connected, with that kid. And then he would talk to the parent differently, and then back to me differently. And it was just the most amazing display, most amazing thing to see, how he could be so aware, I guess, of how people wanted to be talked to.
Yeah, that's really what it is. It's about tuning into someone else. So if if I came to see you and you're my client, for example, and I say to you, hey, I have some really terrific products. I really want to sit down with you for a couple minutes today, go through some things. We've had some new innovations that I think really fit well with your business. And you answer me and say, well, that's interesting. We have had some changes around here. They might need some attention. And I come back and I start talking to you this way, you're not going to hear me. But
Mhm.
if I can match your pace and tone, there are folks that say to me, well, gee, Frank, isn't this a little bit manipulative? And I don't feel that way. Again, I feel like I'm trying to speak in your language to help you to be more comfortable with the conversation. And the biggest tenet of all this is that I am responsible for the result of my communication. So if I can absorb that, right? If I can take that on and say, I'm responsible, then I want to do what I can to help you to understand the point I'm bringing, which is to know your map of the world and start to speak in terms that make sense to you. I'm going to avoid the acronyms from my business that nobody knows anything about. I'm going to speak in a tone that's comfortable for you, at a pace that's comfortable for you. And, it facilitates communication because if, how many times have you walked away from a conversation and say, well, that's not what I meant. He misunderstood me. She got me wrong. Well, how's that working for you? That all may be true, but you still get your point across. So the idea then would be you've got to figure out another way to send your point and then another way and until you figure out that person's communication style where they can be receptive enough to hear what you're saying.
Is part of this also matching energy level? Like, for example, I'm an extrovert, and if I am talking with an introvert and I want to maintain my credibility, I need to match their energy level. That's kind
Yeah.
of how it feels like to me.
Well, that's, you're jumping into kind of mirroring, right? So that's
Mm.
that's an important aspect of what we do. And I believe that, again, when folks are in good rapport, they tend to act and look and talk similarly. So the idea is always to front end load that and try to match the energy, Audrey, as you said, is super important. The tonality, all of those things. And circling that back to AI, you know, it's the advent of AI and the growth is so good and so fast and so wonderful. And I use it all the time. I love going into Chat GPT and give me 3 good listening exercises in a group of 50 people where they can pair off and they're in a professional, and I can lay it all out and I'll get a bunch of stuff and then I can riff off of what I get on that and I can create some new exercises that maybe I haven't done before. So it's wonderful and useful for a bunch of things. Um, but I keep emphasizing to folks, the danger, I think, I'm not a young guy. So when I start to tell people anything that isn't about email, texting, or I run the risk of them thinking I'm going to ask them to pull out a quill pen and an inkwell to sign a report. And that's not it. That's why I said I love the tech. I use it constantly. I've got 2 different CRMs. I've got a voice over IP system that allows me to text business numbers. Like there's so many wonderful aspects to technology and in AI. My caution is only that if you don't get good at the one thing that we can do that it can't do, you will be obsolete.
Yeah, and the frustration there too is like, because Frank, you and I do sometimes do some of the same kind of things, is that just because we're pointing out, hey, go in, use AI with eyes wide open,
Right.
that I sometimes I feel like we're mistaken as like, oh, we're anti-AI. And I think just as you and I have made great pains to make it clear what we love the technology, we use the technology and everything like that. Kind of feel like we kind of have to because it's like it seems like everyone's so rah about AI that if you say anything about okay, but use it cautiously or be mindful of this or whatever that the interpretation is or whatever that somehow we're anti-AI. And of course, I'm not a young guy either. So it's like,
Right.
oh, it's just some old curmudgeon or
Mhm.
whatever. I want to adapt to the technology.
Exactly.
It's like, no,
Exactly.
I live for this stuff. So,
Yeah.
but
Well,
you know,
what are some of the credibility killers, though? You talk about using the nuances of NLP for creating trust and rapport. Lee wrote a book called Sales Cred, and his jam is sales credibility. So we've been getting emails generated by AI, Lee and I both, email blasts where the first line over and over is, I hope this email finds you well. And that's
Oh my goodness.
an immediate, clue that a robot wrote it. So what are some of the pitfalls and things to look out
I-
for?
You know, I'm not sure if I'm going to be answering your question directly, but it brought to mind instantly. I was doing a training with a sales team yesterday. The example I was just giving you was for real, with a wonderful company called MBS in New Jersey. They're in office automation, IT, printing, VoIP. They do a bunch of different services. And I had a young group of people, and we were talking. And I said, "How many of you have sent an email that you proposed something, and now you followed up, and your email begins with just checking." I go, have you done that? And, the hands go up and I go, you make, you're killing me. So the idea that we're not direct, you have to find ways, and I said this to them, find ways to be direct without being insulting. And I think that sings of humanity, right? If I say to you in their business, for example, hey, my company will put in their order with the manufacturer at the end of the month. I'd love to be able to include you in that. Are you ready to go forward? That's really what you want to know. So just say it. Just
Yeah.
checking. Have you had a check? Come on.
The word
Say,
just is a
oh,
credibility killer,
oh,
because basically you're
thank you.
giving away your power of authority then
Thank
by
you.
making yourself less than the other person.
100%. Man, I love that. Yeah, be direct and ask those questions. And you can have fun with people too. I gave these guys a lot of different ways to go. So I had a wonderful guy that I quote all the time. His name is Anthony Steers, and he lives in London. And I was with him at a conference once. And Anthony is his moniker is the telephone assassin, which is so good. That's not
Wow.
cool. I wish my name was the telephone, right? How cool is that?
That's cool.
And,
Very Jersey
he,
thing.
yeah, he trains people. He's actually from London, but he trains people in big telemarketing rooms. He trains people on phones. And he said a quote that I loved. He said, "Email will get it off your desk, but it won't get it done."
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of the tough part of training young salespeople. Now AI is going to complicate that even further because, and also it depends on your industry. It may be very well that you want to send out 10,000 emails in a blast and you have this shotgun approach. And if a couple come back to you, you're happy. Most of the companies I work with are more larger type products, and that's not really going to be their strategy. So, how do you make it count? And what Anthony's saying is, as a salesperson, I get so many voicemail connections and so many people that don't want to talk to me, and so many receptionists that bar the door that it's really hard to pick up the phone over and over again. So I revert to email. And then I do that more and more. And suddenly, I've sent out 150 emails today and only made 3 phone calls. And I wonder why my sales are tanking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason. If we go back to what we started with Vanessa Bond's study and that hierarchy of communication, and this is science, this is not me. Cornell's a great university, right? This is in person trumps a phone call, which trumps an email. It just is.
Yeah. So your book is B2B is really P2P. Why just B2B? Because I'm thinking about B2C. I'm thinking about wealth managers. I'm thinking about real estate agents and everything like that. It seems to me that when you're dealing directly with a consumer rather than with a business, I think that what you're teaching here is even more important.
Yeah, 100%. I work with a lot of real estate companies and I think it fits there as well. For me, though, my experience has always been B2B. I've never been a B2C seller. So I didn't feel like I had the credibility to write about
Mm.
it. I do some training in real estate now. I do some training in insurance. I do a lot in insurance, actually. And there's a lot of B2C in that. And you're right, the principles definitely hold true. But I didn't feel like I had the credibility to write about something that I hadn't done personally.
Fair point.
We're back to credibility. Well, it's franksomma.com is your website. It's SOMMA, everybody. And your X handle is FSomma. And are you taking on new clients? What's the best way for people to reach out to you, Frank, that you
I
prefer?
am. The 2 things that I'm
Don't
focused
say email. Don't say.
Right, right. Isn't that funny? I do. I like to do speaking gigs at conferences. If you have a conference and you need a keynote speaker that can give some tools to the people there in a high energy format with a lot of good stories to bring the points across, that's a lot of what I do. Some other things that I do is I work with companies whose sales are lagging to kind of fine tune them and help them. I'll train the sales team a little bit, work with the management on some strategies and some programs to help them do better. And I do some coaching, mostly with groups of salespeople now. I do one-on-one with some CEOs. I have 2 that I do now. And that's the brunt of all of them. If you go to my website, there are places there to book on my coaching section of my page. You can click on a free 15, book a virtual coffee with me, and we'll spend 15 minutes seeing if we're right for one another.
Yeah, it's a very nice looking website, by the way, Frank.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Very
I
pretty.
like the video at the front page too. That's really nice.
Thank you.
So my last question for you is like, so you're a leader of a company, you're in the C-suite, CEO and everything like that. What advice can you give? What one piece of good advice can you give to those people then to make, to establish personal relationships in with the board or with investors or the bank or people like that, that you really need to, have above you or outside the company then to be successful in your role?
I would say the best advice I could give anyone at any level is ask questions and listen well, and then earn the right to ask deeper and more personal questions and continue to listen well. My favorite subject is me. Your favorite subject is you. You can deny it, but it's the truth. We're very interested in ourselves, and many of us are listening, to our own thoughts often. And I believe that if you can, and the key here is sincerity. It's I am genuinely interested in how you got to where you got. I'm going to ask those questions, and I really want to know. If you're trying to fake it and you're doing the fish on the wall thing and mailing it in, it's going to come through as false. So be credible, ask questions, be genuinely interested in the answer, and practice your listening skills.
Well, listening to you has been a pleasure. This 20 minutes went very quickly, Frank. We appreciate you coming on the podcast, and get that book, everybody.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more great information at salesfuel.com.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.